Arya Kapoor was born on a misty autumn morning in a small Indian town, nestled between green hills and crowded bazaars that always smelled of spices and rain. From the moment she entered the world, people whispered about her beauty. Her mother would joke, "This child will break hearts before she even learns to walk." She grew up with eyes so deep they seemed to carry their own light, a tall and graceful frame, and a smile that made even strangers pause. But beauty in a small town was both a blessing and a curse. Arya's family was poor. Her father was a mechanic who worked long hours with oil-stained hands, and her mother stitched clothes in their tiny courtyard to help make ends meet. Beauty didn't pay bills, and dreams were considered luxuries for people who could afford them. Yet, Arya dreamed. She would sit cross-legged on the floor of their living room, eyes fixed on their old television. Bollywood actresses in shimmering gowns danced across the screen, their voices echoing through her imagination. One evening, after watching a film awards show, Arya whispered to her mother, "One day, I'll be on that stage too." Her mother smiled but said nothing. Dreams like that sounded impossible. Girls from their town didn't become stars, they became wives, mothers, and caretakers. Still, something about Arya's conviction made her mother pause before dismissing it. By the time she turned 18, Arya had blossomed into a striking young woman, 5 feet 9 inches with sharp cheekbones, glowing brown skin, and a walk that turned heads even when she wore second-hand clothes. Local photographers often approached her, offering to take her pictures. "You'll be famous one day," they told her, though their flattery was often laced with intentions she didn't trust. College never interested her as much as the world beyond her town. At 19, she took a bold step. She packed a small suitcase, kissed her mother goodbye, and boarded a train to Mumbai, the city of dreams. Her father hadn't approved, muttering about how the city would swallow her alive, but Arya had no intention of letting fear chain her down. Mumbai greeted her with chaos. The air was thick with humidity, honking rickshaws, and the endless chatter of ambition. Everyone seemed to be chasing something: money, fame, or survival. Arya rented a small room in a cramped building where the walls were damp and the lights flickered. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. Her first weeks were spent chasing auditions. She stood in endless lines outside casting agencies, surrounded by dozens of other girls who looked just as striking, if not more polished. Some wore designer dresses, others carried portfolios that screamed wealth. Arya had none of that. Just her natural beauty, determination, and a smile she refused to let the world steal. But the industry was cruel. At her first audition, a casting director looked her up and down and said bluntly, "Too tall. Too raw. Maybe next time." Another told her she had village looks that wouldn't sell products in glossy ads. More than once, men pretended to offer her roles but hinted at favors they expected in return. She left those rooms with her pride intact but her hopes bruised. Money became a problem. Auditions didn't pay bills. She took up odd jobs, waiting tables in cafes, modeling cheap clothing for local shops, even handing out flyers on busy streets. At night, she'd collapse on her thin mattress, wondering if her father had been right. But every morning, she woke up and tried again. It was during one of those long, exhausting days that she met Ryan. Ryan Malhotra was standing outside a small studio, holding a camera. He was 24, tall with an easy charm, and his eyes carried the restless hunger of an artist. When Arya walked past, sweaty and drained from another failed audition, Ryan noticed her. "Excuse me," he called out, holding up his camera. "You have the kind of face I've been searching for." Arya frowned. She'd heard this line before, from too many men whose cameras were nothing but traps. She kept walking. Ryan jogged after her, careful to keep distance. "Wait. I'm not one of those guys. I'm a photographer. Struggling, just like you. Look, I'll show you my portfolio." Something in his voice was different, earnest, not slimy. She paused as he opened his phone to show her pictures of dancers, street performers, and models who clearly trusted him. His work was raw and beautiful, capturing emotion rather than perfection. Reluctantly, she agreed to a test shoot. They met in a park the next morning. Ryan directed her gently, encouraging her to be herself rather than pose. "Don't force it," he said. "Just breathe. Just look at the light like it's your dream calling you." For the first time since she arrived in Mumbai, Arya felt seen, not as an object, but as an artist in her own right. When Ryan showed her the photographs, she barely recognized herself. She looked powerful. Real. That day marked the beginning of something more than collaboration. Ryan and Arya grew close quickly. They'd meet at cafes, talk for hours about dreams bigger than their wallets, laugh over their failures, and walk along Marine Drive at night, watching the waves crash against the shore. He believed in her. "You're not just beautiful, Arya. You're unforgettable," he said one evening as they sat under the city lights. She blushed but deflected, "Easy words from a man who wants me to model for his portfolio." "No," he insisted. "Easy truth from someone who knows talent when he sees it." Their friendship soon blossomed into love. It wasn't grand or dramatic, it was quiet, steady, and full of stolen moments. For the first time since leaving home, Arya felt she wasn't fighting the city alone. But love didn't pay rent, and dreams didn't unfold without resistance. Months rolled by, and rejection became her constant companion. She was too dark for one brand, too tall for another, too inexperienced for films. Agencies made promises only to vanish after taking her money for portfolio fees. Once, she even walked home in the rain after being told, "You'll never make it big. Go home before the city eats you alive." Every rejection weighed on her shoulders, but Ryan's encouragement kept her moving. "One day, they'll beg you to walk into their offices," he would say. "You just have to survive long enough to see that day." Arya wanted to believe him. She held on to that vision like a flame in the storm. Yet, deep down, she knew storms had a way of testing even the brightest flames. Arya's mornings became a cycle of auditions, rejections, and long commutes through the suffocating city heat. Every evening she returned to her small rented room with aching feet and an emptiness that no dinner of instant noodles could fill. Still, she persisted, whispering to herself in the cracked bathroom mirror, "One day, Arya Kapoor will be known." Ryan was her anchor through it all. Whenever her shoulders slumped, he would place a hand on her back and remind her of the girl who had boarded the train with fire in her eyes. He shot her photos regularly, posting them online. Slowly, people began noticing, tiny modeling gigs came through. A jewelry shop hired her for a local ad. A boutique cast her for a catalog shoot. It wasn't glamorous, but it was proof that her face belonged in front of a camera. But the city always asked for more than it gave. One afternoon, Arya walked into an agency office where the walls glittered with framed posters of successful models. The director, a sleek man with a cold smile, studied her portfolio. "You have potential," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But potential alone doesn't get you campaigns. You need support." Arya's heart lifted. Finally, a chance. "What kind of support?" she asked cautiously. The man's smile widened, dripping with suggestion. "Dinner. Drinks. Maybe more. That's how this industry works." Her stomach twisted. She closed her portfolio, stood, and walked out without a word. Outside, she cried on the street until the honking of cars drowned her sobs. That night, she told Ryan. His fists clenched as he muttered, "Bastards. They don't deserve you. But you did the right thing." "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever get a break without losing myself," Arya whispered. "You will," Ryan promised. "And when you do, it'll be on your terms." The weeks dragged on. Money thinned. Ryan picked up wedding photography jobs to support himself, sometimes slipping Arya part of his pay when her rent ran short. She protested, but he insisted, "It's an investment. One day, you'll be the reason I don't have to shoot Uncle and Auntie Sangeets anymore." Yet beneath their laughter, tension grew. Ryan's own dreams as a musician had stalled. His guitar collected dust as he spent his nights editing photos instead of writing songs. One evening, as they sat by the sea, Arya confided, "I got another rejection today. They said I don't have the right look for international campaigns." Ryan sighed. Maybe you should think smaller. TV ads, local films. You don't always have to reach the top." Arya turned sharply. "But I didn't come here to be small. I came here because I believe I can be more." The silence between them stretched. For the first time, Ryan's encouragement sounded like resignation. Months later, Arya landed a break, or what seemed like one. A mid-tier agency offered her a contract, promising auditions for major fashion houses. Excited, she signed without hesitation. But soon she realized it was a trap. They demanded exorbitant training fees, sent her to unpaid auditions, and pocketed money from the small gigs she booked. When she questioned them, they threatened to blacklist her from the industry. Defeated, she confided in Ryan. "They've stolen everything from me. My savings, my time. I'm nothing but a joke to them." Ryan looked at her with a shadow in his eyes. "Maybe they're right, Arya. Maybe this isn't for you." His words pierced deeper than the agency's betrayal. She stared at him, searching for the man who once called her unforgettable. Their fights grew. Ryan accused her of being obsessed with fame, of neglecting their relationship. Arya accused him of giving up on his own dreams. Nights once filled with laughter now echoed with arguments. And then came the betrayal. One night, Arya finished a grueling extra shift at the cafe where she waitressed. She walked to Ryan's flat, desperate for comfort. But when she opened the door, she froze. A woman sat on Ryan's couch, her hand resting too casually on his arm. Their conversation broke when they noticed Arya, and the guilt in Ryan's eyes said everything. Arya didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply turned and walked out, her heart shattering with every step. Later, when Ryan tried to explain, she didn't listen. "You were the one person I thought would never doubt me, never hurt me. But you chose her." Ryan's voice cracked. "I was tired of waiting for a future that never came. I felt like I was losing you to your ambition." Arya's tears finally spilled. "You didn't lose me to ambition. You lost me because you stopped believing in me." The days that followed were some of the darkest of her life. Alone, broke, and heartbroken, she questioned everything. Maybe her father had been right. Maybe her dreams were too big for someone like her. But one night, as she walked past a billboard plastered with a model's glowing face, something inside her reignited. That woman wasn't better than her. She wasn't more deserving. The only difference was persistence, and Arya still had that. She decided heartbreak wouldn't define her. She left the shady agency, even if it meant starting over. She took control of her image, saving enough to create her own professional portfolio with honest photographers. She learned to negotiate, to say no, to walk away from anyone who tried to dim her light. And slowly, doors began to open. A small role in a television drama. A photo shoot for a fashion magazine's back pages. Nothing headline-worthy, but each gig was a stone in the foundation she was building. Behind every camera, she reminded herself, "I am Arya Kapoor. And I belong here." Still, late at night, she sometimes thought of Ryan, the way he once held her dreams as tenderly as his own, and the way he let them slip through his fingers. But instead of drowning in the memory, she used it as fuel. Love could fail. People could betray. But her vision was hers alone, and no one could take it away again. The turning point came one humid afternoon when Arya walked into an open casting call for a new international fashion campaign. Hundreds of girls were lined up, each dazzling in high-end clothes, their makeup flawless. Arya wore a simple black dress, her hair tied in a neat bun, her face bare except for a touch of lip balm. She had no stylist, no manager, only herself. When she finally entered the room, the panel barely looked up. But instead of fidgeting like the others, Arya stood tall. She remembered Ryan once telling her, "Just look at the light like it's your dream calling you." She fixed her gaze forward, shoulders squared, and walked as though the runway was already hers. Something shifted in the room. One of the directors leaned forward, whispering to another. They asked her to stay. Then to try again. Then to speak, to smile, to pose. By the end of the session, they handed her a card. "We'll be in touch," they said. This time, they meant it. Weeks later, Arya's face graced the pages of an international fashion magazine. The campaign showcased her not as a perfect doll, but as a force of authenticity. Her sharp cheekbones, her deep eyes, her commanding presence, all of it became the brand's signature look. Almost overnight, the calls flooded in. Designers wanted her. Photographers begged to shoot her. Casting directors suddenly found her unique and irresistible. For Arya, it was dizzying. The same industry that had once dismissed her now held doors wide open. But she had changed. She was no longer the naive girl desperate for approval. She read contracts carefully. She demanded respect. She refused shortcuts that cost her dignity. Her calendar filled with shoots, interviews, and even screen tests for film roles. She traveled to Paris, Milan, New York, cities she had only seen in glossy magazines. Each time she stepped onto a runway or in front of a camera, she carried her small-town roots with pride. She had made it. Fame, however, came with its shadows. People from her past resurfaced. Agents who once exploited her now claimed they discovered her. Photographers who ignored her requests sent her messages begging for collaborations. Even Ryan appeared one evening, waiting outside her apartment building. He looked older, more worn. His eyes carried regret. "Arya," he said softly. "You're everything I knew you would be. I'm sorry for not believing, for betraying, for everything. I thought I'd lost you to ambition, but I see now you were right. You were never lost. You were just finding yourself." For a moment, her chest tightened. Memories of late-night walks, shared laughter, and stolen kisses flooded her mind. Part of her longed to forgive, to rewind time. But then she remembered the nights she had cried alone, the betrayal that had almost broken her spirit. She had rebuilt herself without him, and she wasn't about to hand her strength away again. "I loved you once," she said, her voice steady. "But I've learned to love myself more. That's what saved me." Ryan nodded, eyes glistening. He didn't argue. He just whispered, "I'll always cheer for you," before disappearing into the city night. Arya's career soared higher. She landed a role in a global film, a story about resilience, ironically mirroring her own life. Critics praised her raw performance. Fans adored her authenticity. She became a symbol for young women everywhere who were told they weren't enough. On a warm evening in Paris, Arya stood backstage before the biggest runway show of her life. The curtains shimmered, the music roared, and the world waited. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and thought of the girl who once whispered to her mother, "One day, I'll be on that stage too." The curtains opened. She stepped forward. Cameras flashed. The crowd erupted. But amidst the chaos, Arya walked with calm power. Every step was for the little girl in the small town, for the rejections, for the heartbreak, for every time she had been told she wasn't enough. She was enough. More than enough. The runway ended with her lifting her chin, her smile radiant. In that moment, she wasn't just a model or an actress or a face in a magazine. She was a story, a living proof that dreams, no matter how impossible, could defy gravity. Months later, during a global interview, a journalist asked, "What's the secret to your success?" "Beauty? Luck?" Arya leaned forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "No. The secret is persistence. Beauty fades, luck is fickle, but persistence is the fire that carries you through storms. And I had to walk through many storms before I found the light." The clip went viral, shared millions of times. Young women from villages, towns, and cities wrote to her, calling her their inspiration. For the first time, Arya realized her dream wasn't just about fame, it was about impact. Her struggle wasn't wasted, it had become a beacon for others. On a rainy night back in Mumbai, Arya visited her parents. Her father, once skeptical, watched her arrive in a car with cameras trailing. Neighbors peered through their windows, whispering in awe. Her mother embraced her tightly. "I always knew," she whispered. "I always knew you'd shine." Arya smiled through tears. "I almost gave up so many times. But I remembered what you once told me, dreams are impossible until someone makes them possible." I wanted to be that someone. Her father, though still quiet, placed his hand on her shoulder. In his eyes, pride glimmered where doubt once lived. Years later, Arya Kapoor became not just a star, but a legend. She built her own foundation to support aspiring actors and models from small towns, offering them guidance without exploitation. She funded schools, mentored young artists, and used her fame not for vanity but for change. And though love had once betrayed her, she didn't close her heart forever. In time, she found companionship again, not with someone who doubted her, but with someone who admired her strength. Yet the real love story was always between Arya and her dream. Because while the world knew her as the woman who conquered runways and cinemas, she knew herself as the girl who refused to bow to rejection, betrayal, or fear. She was Arya Kapoor. She had dreamed, she had struggled, she had risen. And in every corner of the world, from glittering cities to quiet villages, millions looked at her story and whispered, "If she can, so can I." The spotlight was hers. Forever.